I was going to dismantle my amazing Perpetual play tap because my kids are long past the age where they're interested in it, and I can use the parts for something else. But I thought just before I did, I'd do a quick video in case it gives somebody else the idea or helps someone else with the idea. Basically, the story behind it is that my kids, when they were very little, very much like to play with a running tap in a sink or in the garden. They could do that for hours, and that's a bit irresponsible when there's a drought on, as there was for a lot of their childhood. So you couldn't really just leave them with a tap running forever. So I invented this. It's not exactly a startling invention. All it is a tap and a little 12-volt submersible pump on the back, and this sits in a big tub of water or a play pool, or I think we used to use it just in the laundry tubs. This is wood, but it's Australian hardwood, so it's actually heavier than water, so it sinks down to the bottom, just sits on the bottom, and the pump sucks in water down here, brings it up this pipe, and you turn the tap on and away it goes. And the kids can play with it indefinitely, and it just keeps recycling the water around and around. They can turn the tap on and turn it off and all of that. It's pretty self-explanatory how you build it. I don't really need to go through it, I'm sure, but it's just a tab, a fitting to allow you to screw it onto some sort of an upright, and a couple of little fittings to get it to a piece of 1/2 inch, 13mm tube that comes down and connects on top of the pump, and that's about it. The only two technical notes, I suppose I would say, is that this is not a cheap pump. It's a proper boating one. I suppose it would originally have been a bilge pump. It pumps 1,000 litres an hour, I think, 280 gallons per hour. And your kids won't play with it unless you get a fairly solid little pump that can put through a fair bit, because if it's just some weak little thing that's only trickling water out, they're going to lose interest pretty fast. This, I would say, is the minimum. This is only really just enough really to replicate a running tap. So I would say get something 1,000 litres an hour, 280 gallons per hour, or bigger, nothing smaller than that. Other technical notes: it is 12 volts and up to 4.5 amps. Now that's a fairly hefty sort of a current. So it won't just run off any 12-volt wall wart or something like that. You'll need a pretty hefty one. I think I've got one that's 12-volt 5 amp, and it runs off that. Another way to run it would be, which would actually be quite safe way to run it, would be to run it off a car battery or something like that, which also has the advantage, of course, that it completely isolates it from mains power. So actually, yeah, running it off a car battery would probably be a good idea, although they'll probably run the battery flat. And just on that note of avoiding electrocution, I've got it on a very long wire. It's probably a good 4 or 5 meters, so to 12-15 feet long wire, so that it can be a long way away from a power point, and a long way away from the power supply that I was using, so that mains power was nowhere near it. Of course, there is always, with any mains powered unit, the theoretical possibility of a loss of isolation, which might cause mains power to come down the wires. That's obviously an extremely remote possibility, but I would always run this off power points that have earth leakage circuit breakers on them. GFCs, as they're called here. I think they have various other names, so that if you ever did have an accident, well, if you ever did have some sort of a fault in your power supply, it would shut off immediately. If you wanted to be really super safe, what you could do is put a heavy wire from the water, or maybe run it off this tap here. Actually, that would be a good idea. Run a heavy wire from this onto ground, so that if there was ever a problem, your kid isn't going to get electrocuted. I should say, these are very remote possibilities and they don't really worry me, but some people are more worried about these things, and I'd take those precautions if I was you, or run it off 12-volt car battery, because then that removes the electrocution risk completely. That's about it. I hope maybe someone builds this and some other kids have some fun with it.